This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.
What is happening, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast. I'm excited today because we are talking about sales. And as you guys well know, I am a big fan of sales. Now, this gentleman is truly an expert at it. Ari Galper is the world's #1 authority on trust-based selling and has been featured in CEO magazine, Forbes, Inc. magazine, SkyNews, and the Australian Financial Review. In his best-selling book, Unlock the Sales Game, Ari describes his revolutionary sales approach based on getting to the truth and why having a mindset of focusing on deep trust instead of the sale is ironically 10 times more profitable. You know what, Ari, I agree with you, man, but I'm excited to hear about it. How you doing, brother?
Good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Gonna have a good time today.
Yeah, that should be a lot of fun. You're coming in from Australia, if I'm not mistaken, but there is no Australian accent happening. So give me your story, man. How'd you end up over there?
Yeah, the accent deceiving, isn't it? So I'm originally from California. I met my wife on a dating site 20 years ago, pre-swiping. This is like old school, you know, like text and a photo and an email. That's all we had back then. She's from Sydney, working in California. We met in Los Angeles. We started dating there. And she's like, come out to Sydney and visit my family. I'm like, okay, it's a bit far, but I'll come out there. So we came out, got engaged, got married here, then moved back to the US and just started our life there. And about a year later, we decided to move back over here. A gift came into our lives, our first son, Toby, and the story behind him, I'll tell you in a little bit. But so I've been here for the last 20 years and really running everything globally. It's been going great so far.
Well, running everything globally, obviously sales is a global game. So I guess it doesn't matter whether you're in LA, Sydney, or Dubai for that matter. Sales is everywhere. Why sales, man? Have you always been involved in it? Or tell me kind of your background, how you got to the point that you're writing books, you're helping people worldwide with trust-based selling. I love it.
Well, I'll tell you the story that happened to me 20 years ago. I was a sales manager in a software company, and we launched the first online website tracking tools. It's called Google Analytics now, a little software tool that people use. But we launched the first one years ago, and fast-growing company, managing 18 reps underneath me. And the big opportunities came across my desk, the big leads. So I got this one inbound phone call from the website. I got the call one day, big company. The guy says to me, Ari, we want to look at your product. We have lots of websites. And I was like, oh man, if I close this one sale, it'll double the revenue in one opportunity. That's how big it was. And I was like, this is the deal you'll hopefully get once in a lifetime. So the guy agrees to a conference call Friday afternoon. I'll never forget it. I showed up in my conference room with my CEO, closed door behind me, big long conference table. On the table is the old school speakerphones, the black ones with like 3 legs on it, Star Trek looking phones. So I hit the dial tone, dial the number. The guy picks it up. He's like, hey, Ari, how's it going? I said, great. And he's like, let me tell you, Ari, who's with us in the room today. In fact, I'll have them all introduce themselves. I'm like, oh, didn't realize there'd be someone else there. Next thing I might hear is, my name is Mike, I'm CEO. I was like, oh, this is good. My name's Jim, I'm head of global IT. Perfect. My name's Mary, I'm head of global marketing. Amazing. I mean, everybody on this call was a decision maker. Like, it's going to happen. It's going to happen today. They're all in the one spot, you know? And so I introduced myself, explained what we do. We all logged in on the web, and I started giving them a live demo to show them how it all works, all the data and everything. And I'm showing this to them, and I start hearing this noise on the phone call, like, wow, this is great. This is amazing. They start asking me all kinds of questions. How does it work? How do we install it? How does technology work? And of course, I had all the answers. I was competent. And there was so much chemistry on this phone call. It was like a love fest on the phone. You know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely, man. This sounds like a dream so far.
Yeah, they got the questions. You got the answers. There's so much chemistry on this phone call. It was like, you know, there's no resistance, honestly. And an hour goes by. I'm doing everything I'm taught to do by the sales gurus. I got all the books at home, the CDs in my car back then, you know, build rapport, answer objections. I was doing everything I was supposed to, and they were loving it. And the call comes to a close, and my guy says to me, Ari, this is great. We love it. Look, give us a call a couple of weeks, follow up with us, and we'll move this thing forward. I'm like, oh, thank you, God. I was like, oh, perfect. I said my goodbyes. I took my hand to reach over for the speakerphone to hit the off button. As I'm reaching for the off button, by complete accident, I hit the mute button instead of the off button. They were like right next to each other, and I hit the wrong button, and a small click happened, and they thought I hung up the phone. In that split second, a voice inside of me says, Ari, go to the dark side. Be a fly in the wall. Go where no one's ever gone before in the world of sales. So I pulled my thumb back for a couple of seconds. They started talking amongst themselves, thinking I had left the call. Now, this is not a trick question, but what would you imagine they would have said? What would you expect them to say after a call like that?
Well, I'm guessing in your head, you're thinking, oh man, we love this product. We love how competent this guy is. This is perfect. And I'm guessing that's not what we heard, but I'm curious now.
Yeah, that's what you expect them to hear. I mean, that's what all the signals were that. But let me tell you what I heard verbatim, word for word. I'll never forget it. It's why we're all here today. And here's what they said. They said, we're not going to go with him. Keep using him for more information and make sure we shop someplace else cheaper. Knife in heart twist. I was in a state of shock, literally. And I snapped out of it, hit the off button, looked at the wall, and I said to myself, what did I do wrong? I was professional. I was friendly. I was competent. I wasn't pushy. I did everything I was supposed to do by the sales books. Everything by the checklist perfectly right. And I asked myself, and I realized I had the first epiphany, and that was this, and I said, why were they afraid to tell me the truth? Why not just tell me up front what was going on? And I realized that somewhere along the way, it has become socially acceptable not to tell the truth to people who sell, right? It's okay to say things like, sounds good, send me information. Oh, we're definitely interested. Wait, send me a proposal without any intention of what?
And I'm moving forward, that's for sure. That's a blow off.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
I'm like, why is this game going on? Why are we caught up in this dysfunctional relationship with people where everyone's not telling the truth? Why are we in this matrix? Why don't we just come out of it and just start talking to each other honestly? And I asked myself, why were they afraid to tell me the truth? And I realized that there is this invisible flow of pressure that flows underneath every conversation you have with someone in your pipeline, in your sales process. And unless you get really good at pulling the walls back down and building trust with people, then you will always be chasing what I call ghosts. People in your net who are playing games with you, following up with them, calling them, and playing that numbers game that everybody hates so much, and it becomes a nightmare. And so that became my whole mission 2 decades ago, called Unlock the Game, to unlock this crazy sales game and build a new approach called Trust-Based Selling, where it's a mindset shift, where your goal is not to focus on the sale anymore. Your goal is to build deep trust with people, build this, what I call a moment of vulnerability, where they feel comfortable telling you the truth. And that became my whole premise and philosophy for the last 2 decades.
Well, brother, you were ahead of the game. Talking vulnerability 2 decades ago, that word wasn't exactly popular, especially in this sales game, until recently. So you definitely are kind of a I don't know, you're way ahead of everybody. You're venturing into new territory. But what is the key then, brother? Did you get a chance when you followed up? Because obviously you weren't supposed to hear the conversation. Were you able to ask them, hey man, what was it that I did? Or did you just kind of figure this whole thing out that they were just having niceties? They're going to utilize me for the skills that I did have. How did you put it all together?
Well, I realized at that moment that something has to change. They never called me back. They were gone. And I felt abused. I felt rejected, and I felt that this is the wrong way to treat people. And so, my work over the last 2 decades has been all about avoiding situations like this. And people always ask me, Ari, what would you do now? If you know what you do now, 20 years and go back in the time machine, how would you handle that call now? And my answer to that is, I never would have had the call. Because I would have known on the first conversation with this guy what their agenda was. And that's the whole goal we're talking about today, is how do you build enough trust with people so they feel comfortable telling you the true agenda? So no longer do you play games anymore and end up in that horrible place.
Yeah, obviously that's not a great place to be. And you mentioned one of the words that I talk about frequently with sales teams, and that is rapport, because genuine rapport and hey, look at that piece of wall, art on the wall, two totally different things. So, brother, talk to me a little bit about some of these sales myths, all the CDs and books and all the gurus you were listening to. What are some of those myths that you've been able to really figure out that's just not the way it actually works in an effective relationship, because that's what you're entering into, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you know these. We are told things like sales is a numbers game, right? The more contacts you make, the more phone calls you make, the more sales you make. Well, no longer is it a numbers game anymore. The world's changed. It's not about how many contacts you make anymore. It's about how deep you go on each conversation, how good you are at trust building, not how good you are at how many contacts you have. The second flip myth is this idea that the sales lost at the end of the process. You know how you had a deal pending and you're like, what happened? We lost it. It was such a good opportunity. Well, it turns out the sale's not lost anymore at the end of the process. It's now lost at the beginning of the process, at hello. And I'll prove it to you right now in a fun way. If someone calls your office tomorrow morning and you pick up the phone and you hear, hi, my name is, I'm with, we are a, what goes through your mind in about 3 seconds?
Well, typically you're a telemarketer and I'm saying, hey, man, I am a buyer, so I'm pretty nice about it, but I'm letting them know I think you're a telemarketer. What do you want from me?
Yeah, your guard goes up right away. You shut down. And I'm not suggesting your folks are all making outbound calls, but I'll make the case today that many of them are losing their opportunities, not at the end of the process. They're losing it way at the beginning. The last myth is this idea of rejection, where if you're not tough enough, if you're not thick-skinned enough, if you can't take a no, remember the old manager telling you in the back of your ear, get back out the game and get tough and make that call. Well, it turns out the rejection is triggered by certain things you say and do unconsciously that cause the other person to push back on you. And now you're hitting that wall again. And we'll talk about that in the next few minutes about what it is of those triggers. And that's the key myth to really kind of clean out in the back of your mind to be open to new ideas around this.
Yeah, and I want to get to that for sure. But one of the things that you've touched on that I love talking about is, look, it doesn't really matter who's in front of you. They are going to buy you. So in my opinion, the sale is based on you. It really isn't based on your widget or whatever. Of course you have to have a good product, but I am hook, line, and sinker with you, brother. Like I agree with you. So let's talk about that. How do you start that conversation differently so you don't get put off as that telemarketer, sales guy? And that is a question we'll get to too. Why does sales have such a bad reputation? Because I want to talk about that as well.
Sure. So let's choose different scenarios. So one scenario might be outbound calling, right?
Okay.
And we'll do that real quick if you have people who do that kind of work. So the typical approach is, hi, how are you today?
Good.
How are you today? How's it going? My name is, I'm, see, the minute you hear that, it's over. So our approach is different. How we handle it is this. Hi, John. My name's Ari, and I'm hoping you can help me out for a moment. That's it. And human nature, when you ask for help like that, is to say, how can I help you? That's called a two-way dialogue at hello. That's how you connect from the beginning without all that resistance. Then you're going to say, I'm just giving you a call to see if you'd be open. Notice the language in there. If you'd be open, some different ideas on ways to address the issues of, and you plug in the problems that you believe your market has. You do not talk about your solution. You talk about their issues. You have to be problem-centric. Now, there's a lot more behind all this, but I'm just giving you a quick inroad into how we coach people who do that kind of work. That's outbound. Now, inbound, let's just say you have a scheduled call with somebody, like on LinkedIn or inbound lead, right? Or in a referral. and you have your first Zoom call with them, right? And you're like, hey, you meet them for the first time and they're a lead of yours. Normally, how do calls like that usually go in the beginning? Like, for instance, what do you do in the beginning with people when you meet with them for the first time? That it could be in your sales process.
Hey, brother, where are you calling in from? Surface level rapport.
Yeah. So you're right. We're taught that our first job is build rapport and get them to like us. How's it going? Where are you from? How's COVID? Really? Are you kidding? Hey, what do you do? Really? We charm it up real quick because we think our job is for them to like us. Now, of course, they know it's fake. 2, they don't want to become your friend anyways. But we're taught from the old gurus that our job is to build relationships with people. Well, it is when it's authentic. When it's not authentic with a hidden agenda, it's over, man. They know it's a game. So our approach is not, and this is going to sound kind of crazy, here comes the bomb, is not to build a relationship with someone pre-sale. We discovered that relationship building and trust building are mutually exclusive. They don't even have to like you to work with you, as long as they trust you. That's the craziest thing of all. It's like a doctor-patient relationship. When you go see a doctor, they don't try and become your friend because they know if they cross social norms and professional norms, it's going to be really messy when they tell you what you got to do to solve your problem. They know, first thing they say to you is, where does it hurt? And you say, my shoulder. He says, let me take a look. Over here, oh wow, that's sensitive, isn't it? Let's get an x-ray right away. Let's diagnose the problem. Let's figure out what the issue here. You're like, sounds good, doc. You get the x-ray, he throws it on the light bulb thing behind there. He says, see that little black area over there? That's the problem. You got this, you got this, you got that, you got that. You're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that was the problem. Then you rest your prescription, right? And here's the medicine you got to take. Then you walk out the door, and you go to one more place before you go to your car. You know where you go before you go to your car? The last stop?
You
go to the front desk.
I'm going to say
you go to the front
bathroom, or those are the two. Checkout, I guess, before you leave.
You go to the front desk and you pay. You pay the doctor for diagnosing your problem, but not solving it. It was never, you're still in pain. Now, that model is what we figured out how to architect for a live initial call with someone via Zoom. So when you show up with someone, of course, you gotta be nice in bedside manner. You say, hey, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you as well. But you don't just keep rolling to become their friend first. What you say is this, you say, if it's okay with you, ask permission first. Can we take a step back for a moment? And can you walk me a bit through your story, a bit of your background, your current challenges you have in your business, and we'll go from there. Would that be okay with you?
Sounds great. One of the things you did straight away, and I'm sorry, one of the things you do,
that's right.
and that's what's challenging doing a podcast, because you are deliberate, you're slower in speech, and I have to imagine that is strategic. Like when you did the Outbound, as a podcast host, dead air is not ideal. So I'm like wanted to step in, but I wanted to just hear it out because the natural reaction was to talk, but you kept me engaged by saying, if you, and I don't remember the exact verbiage, but that is by design, I'm guessing.
Half of this is delivery, not just the words. You got to be calm. You got to be centered. Zero enthusiasm, no hype, no excitement. See, we're taught in sales to be excited, enthusiastic. Show them that you have a great solution. Get out there and show them you care. So we get all teed up. We're all hyped up. Like, hey, how's it going? Hey, great. See, it's like we put the sales armor on around us. We leave our house, we go to work, and now we're teed up. We're getting ready for bullets coming our way. We get all kind of like, and I'm like, that's the problem. That's a stereotypical image that people don't want to talk to people around that. But when you're calm and you slow things down and lower your voice and create space like that, space engenders people to come towards you. That's how they connect with you. When you start talking and filling the void, they aren't listening. They're trying to figure you out. See, the whole time they're asking themselves this question: do I trust him? Do I trust him? Do I trust him? They're not asking themselves and analyzing your solution. They're like, And we're on square one right now. And you're the guy on square three. Here's the demo. Let me show what we got. You're going to love it. It's great. It'll solve your problem. Believe me. It's over. Over to hello.
Yeah, it's actually pretty fascinating because I was actually working with a gentleman this morning. We were talking about recruiting, and I said, give me your pitch. And immediately he starts selling me on how great his company is. And I said, stop. You have to connect with me, brother. You don't even know what I like about what I do, what I don't like about what I do. And that's what I'm hearing, brothers. You're really saying, hey, tell me about you. Tell me what your wants, what your needs are. And I don't know if that's because I haven't read your books yet, but I love sales, so I absolutely will. But is that more the opening is to say, again, asking questions about them, genuinely listening and giving a shit about the answer, not just rolling through some script?
This is going to sound blindly obvious, probably to you as a guy who's been around the block for a while, but you got to care about people. And they got to feel that from you. If they don't feel that you care about them, it is over, my friend. We are living in a new age where trust is a new currency. And if you aren't consciously aware of how you're being perceived at all levels, from your voice tonality, the words that you use in your approach, man, you're playing the numbers game forever. You're gonna be stuck chasing ghosts forever. And only a few will pop out at the end of the month and go, why am I working so hard here? It's because think about it for a second. They got a problem. You got a solution, right? Straight line of sight. What's the middle of that? Us. We jump in there, we do all this stuff, and we're like, why didn't that work out? We had a great conversation, great chemistry. Man, he's a perfect fit for me. Why do you want me to chase him down a proposal? Because we messed it up. We're so conditioned the old way to kind of like do all these things that don't apply anymore. They don't want to hear this. They're tired of all the sales stuff. All they want to do is find someone they can trust.
Hope everybody heard that. Trust is the new currency. I love that. And I'm excited to get into referrals because I guarantee Ari's referrals are pretty much unlimited. My guess is he doesn't have to go knocking on doors. That would be my guess. Now, before we get into that, Ari, the old way, brother, how did these gurus create this? Is that how sales just used to be? Or did it just sound good in some boardroom? Somebody wrote a book and said, this is the way sales is. Because I totally am. Like I said, I agree with you, but man, sales books have not been preaching what you're saying. And truth be told, very few still are. There's a couple, but not very many are saying what you're saying. So where did this get created?
Look, the world was different back then when it all started out. I think back the 80s and 70s was where it was really, there was the heyday, the seminars, the gurus, and, how many of the two are left anymore? Most of them are pretty much gone. Everyone's now on social media now. Sales really isn't a thing anymore. Amazing to me. But what has happened is that people accepted that back then because our society was more face-to-face and less all the stuff we have now, technology. So it was kind of okay. It was a profession that people respected back then. Now it's not. And the approach people are still using, even from entrepreneurs, even sophisticated people like financial advisors, are still using what they learned from those old decades, still today in the modern day, that people know a mile away, man, they just unconsciously turn off, they shut down. And it's all unconscious. We're not even aware of it. I'll give you an example. I'm going to ask all your listeners right now to remove one key phrase forever from their vocabulary and never use it ever again after this recording. Here it is. This might hurt just a bit. You've been in sales for a long time. I'm going to ask you all to never again use the phrase follow up ever again as of today. What's the only industry in the world that uses the word follow up? I'm calling it follow up. Who does that?
Sales.
Salespeople. Yeah. Of course. Because it's a habit. It's in the back of our subconscious. Hi, I'm giving you a call. And if I ask your audience right now, how many of you have emailed someone in the last few weeks and said, hi, I'm writing you to follow up? I bet your hands will go up left and right. There's a few more classic ones. Remember the classic ones? Just calling a touch base, checking in. These are classic from the old book, And so that's what's hurting everyone. They're unaware of their own behavior. So instead of follow up, here's what you say instead. You say, I'm giving you a call to see if you have any feedback from our previous conversation, any feedback from our last meeting, any feedback from proposal. See, feedback's going which direction? It's going backwards, away from the sale, not forwards towards the sale. See, we're so conditioned to chase anything that moves. Our mission is to move them forward from step A to step B to step C. We're wired that way. And the problem with that is they know what's coming. They know what your game is, man. If you don't let go of that process and be present with them in their space, it's over. You won't know it to the end, of course, because you'll be chasing people forever. But they won't tell you this, by the way. They'll never tell you verbally why they're not going to go with you. They'll just disengage and let you chase them. That's why it's your job to bring the walls down, change your behavior, and make that deep connection.
So what he said is so accurate, guys. Specific to giving permission for feedback. Some of my best clients are the ones that 100% are like, nope, don't care for you. Great. Can I get some, will you tell me what I could do differently? Can I get some feedback? Really giving them permission. So I like I said, man, this guy is so spot on. But Ari, the other one we're going to have to get rid of. There's a whole saying on the follow-up. You guys have heard it. Fortune is in the follow-up. I mean, you've heard it how many times? It's so funny to me. So brother, talk to me about referrals, because again, we're talking vulnerability. We're talking about trust and relationships. I have to imagine you have a pretty significant amount of referrals in your business, whether you're strategic about that or not. And that's what I'm really curious to get into. But talk to me about referrals, because I built my entire businesses off referrals through a lot of the stuff you're saying. So I'm really curious from your perspective, how you approach that.
Well, it's the same model here. Referrals will come from people who trust you the most. And if they're just doing business with you only at the business level, but feel you don't really care about them at a deep level, you won't get referrals from them. And it applies the same situation here. Now, in our case, we use a book as our main referral tool. Well, we give books to our clients that pass them to other clients, and they call us back because of that as a marketing process. But essentially, it comes down to the same type of thing. And because people don't want to, they feel obligated. What happens is when you ask someone for a referral, they feel like, oh God, now I got to call someone and tell them about you. I mean, Jesus, I like you, but I ain't going that far with you, buddy. See, we make such assumptions with people. We assume certain things. That's why you got to make sure that from the beginning of the process with them that you do it right.
That's beautiful, man. So talk to me about some more principles behind your approach. Obviously, you said, I think you said 50% is in delivery. Man, that is something that, your tonality, your body language, how you speak, the words you're choosing. So that's 50%. What's the other 50%? You mentioned caring about the other person on the other side. Obviously, now we're talking emotional. So talk to me about some of these principles and how people can develop, other than getting your books, which I'm going to get people there for sure as well. But what else can people really, look in the mirror and say, I can improve based on hearing this podcast?
Sure. So one of our core principles behind our Unlock the Sales Game approach is this one, and that is always be diffusing pressure, always taking pressure out of the conversation every step of the way. And you do that, and here's your answer to the question you asked me, which is 50%. The other half of it is called trust-based languaging. The words and phrases that you use to activate this in real time, okay? Let me give you an example. Here's a great scenario. Let's say you have a first call with somebody over the phone, a prospect. They're qualified, great opportunity, good chemistry. You're like, hey, this is a good deal for both of you. Things are looking really good. Call comes to a close. What do you normally say to someone at the end of a call like that? Not a trick question. What's the normal thing that we say in sales when we have a great call with someone and then if there's momentum and the call ends? What do we say next usually?
I mean, I'll look forward to, reaching back to you, or, something along those lines.
Yeah. We say, how about we move forward? Next step, cup of coffee, follow up. We're conditioned to move people forward. aren't we? But what happens if you try and move somebody forward and they aren't ready yet? What do you break with them right there early in your process? You break trust with them, right? So same scenario, our mindset, our approach. Good chemistry, good opportunity, call comes to a close, rather than saying, hey, how about we move forward? What we say instead is this. We say, where do you think we should go from here? And I'll say it again. Where do you think we should go from here? Now, how does that change the dynamic of the moment?
Significantly, you've given me the power, which again, most sales books would say, don't do that, but you're giving me the choice to pick the direction, whatever that may be.
When you say to somebody, where do you think we should go from here? They're usually in a state of shock. They can't believe somebody would actually ask them what they want to do. It's unheard of in a sales situation. And they usually say things like, well, I've got one more question. Or what about this? You know what comes out? The truth. And that's your goal. Your goal is to get to the truth of people so they open up to you and tell you where they stand. So you know this is going to happen or not in the beginning and not the end. There's this drug that we take as salespeople, as people in sailing. It's a metaphor. It's called hopium. You know, the hopium drug, where you kind of hope it's going to work out. Woohoo! I had a great call. Yeah, on the pipeline, looking good. Woohoo! You're all excited about the opportunity. You got this hopium thing going on, and you call them back, and you get their voicemail like, "What? They're not even there." And you go to your computer and you type in your email. You say, "Hi, I'm just writing you to follow up." And you're stuck in this black hole, and you're like, God, sales sucks, man. I just don't like it. I'll go to LinkedIn and play in there. It's more fun. I can talk to people. See, we're so used to being abused in the process that we're getting numb to it now. We treat people as prospects, not human beings. What we have to do is we have to humanize the sales process again and connect deeply with people if you want to be successful in your business.
Well, look, whether we're talking being in the sales industry or in my opinion, the entire world of sales. When I go talk to my wife tonight, I am doing sales about something, I promise you. And she is doing sales back to me. Ari, is that a fair assessment to say that the world we live in is sales? So don't have negative taste in your mouth about it, except that this is a human connection. This is really communicating with another human being. And really, again, forget the agendas for a moment. Be very clear with your intent. This is what I'm doing. I want you to understand where I'm coming from. I mean, isn't that really what we're doing every single moment of every single day?
Funny you should mention that. I really had someone give us a call and said they got our book and it saved their marriage. I was like, what? What do you mean? My wife and I were on the verge of divorce. We couldn't communicate with each other. I started studying materials and I started changing my approach to my languaging. And I said to her, honey, would you be open? And we started communicating differently. All of a sudden she started talking back to me. And now we realized that we're reconnecting again because I was the problem. I wasn't communicating with her in the way I should. And we were on the verge of our life literally splitting in half. And now we're back together again, thanks to your approach of communication. Because look, you're right. This is trust-based communication, not just selling. This has to do with kids, your wife, your business, your partners, your employees, your customers. This is the way you go. We got to change how we approach people and communicate with them. Because look what's happening right now in the world. Trust is at the lowest point it ever has been before. There's so many smoke and mirrors out there and so many changing goals and goalposts. You want to ask yourself, where do you stand in this world anymore? But if you could take control of your own self and be open to changing how you approach people, the rewards come right back to you so fast, it'll make your head spin.
It's got to make you feel good, brother, just to be helping people, not only in their business, but obviously in their personal relationships. And you're right. Let's just say politically, I don't care if you're right or left. It really doesn't matter. If we could get this in their hands to say, just let's be honest with each other here. What are we trying to accomplish? What is our end game? But that's for a different conversation. I want to ask you specific because obviously you're trained in being extremely calm. You get that rebuttal, you get that objection. Do you have a feel, felt, found? One of those things that we've learned forever in order to really be calm in your response and not react with stats and all that. Is that part of your repertoire, or do you have a different approach in your system?
Great question. So when it comes to resistance like that, objections, most people only have two options: fight or flight. They defend themselves or they retreat. It's binary. That's the old model. Our approach, of course, is contrarian. It's different. We have a middle ground where we diffuse the pressure. We engage with them to preserve the relationship and the process that we have going on. Let me give you an example. Let's say someone says to you in your business, your price is too high. Your fees are just way too much for us right now. What's a typical response to that? If someone said that to you, your price is too high, or your fees too high, or you charge too much, what would you say?
I guess I would, what is your budget that you're looking to spend? It would be somewhere along those lines. If I can create a different option, traditional sales, that's kind of the approach.
Yeah. So we try and figure out a way around it. Either we drop and say, how much can you afford? Mm-hmm. Or we say, we try and be clever and weave around the resistance. The thing is, we don't even know what the resistance is. It could be a smokescreen for just a game that could be trying to negotiate with. We don't even know. We just react. So here's how we handle it with our approach. By the way, we have this all mapped out with every single scenario you can ever imagine in your life when it comes to selling. Here's an example. Someone says to you, your price is too high. Here's what you say in our approach with the mindset getting corrected. You say, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And here it comes. It can be, here's the operative word, it can be perceived as high. You're right. You haven't had a chance to work with us and see the results and how it impacts your life. You're right. On the outside in, it can be perceived that way. No doubt about that. The last thing I want to do is try and convince you otherwise, that it's different. But would you be open to a different perspective on how we can look at this differently to build a business case together so it makes sense for you to consider this? Would you be open to that? Now, out of role play for a second. What I just did there was I diffused and I re-engaged without a fight, without resistance, without defending myself, without doing any sales behaviors that they're used to. And that's how you preserve the moment without breaking everything down.
Yeah, I mean, it's strong, brother. There is no resistance when you say you're right, because again, that's going to make them feel at ease. It's not a fight anymore. It's, oh, okay, I'm not crazy that the price could be too high. Gosh, the other question I have is, you are, as a podcast guest, it's extremely valuable what you do, but it also must work well in sales. You say, here's an example. You talk through story. Is that something that you're also utilizing when you're giving examples in a sales scenario to say that they're not alone, that they are, for instance, there's other people in their position? I'm just curious because it's something that you naturally do so well.
Look, if it's appropriate, sure. We'll let people, there's a scenario that comes up and they think they're alone and they aren't. I would say certainly other people like you. I just got the phone a minute ago before we started talking to a financial advisor I'm coaching right now. And he feels like he's hitting a wall. And I said to him, you're not alone. Most people in your situation are used to hitting this wall because of the old conditioning. And I think he felt some relief with that. Sure, if it's appropriate and you're doing it out of care, yeah.
Awesome. I have to ask you, outside of your books, which again, we will put that in the show notes, any other books that have really profoundly impacted you both in the sales game and just in life in general. We have some voracious readers that are listening to this show. I'm just curious. You're clearly a successful guy, a very educated guy that's done well. And I love getting those books out in front of people.
Sure, absolutely. It's a great book for one of my friends and mentors. His name is Perry Marshall, and his book is called 80/20 Sales and Marketing. That's been a profound impact on my thinking and refined my approach even more. And I use that filter every single day in my business in many, many ways. So that's what I recommend.
Awesome. Ari, I just want to give you open forum, but I look down, it's already been 40 minutes and I could talk about sales literally for the next 3 hours, but we're not going to do that. Anything I didn't ask you that you're like, JM, I want to share this with the audience before we kind of start to wrap up? Anything I didn't ask you, you're like, man, come on. So I want to give you just open forum. Anything we didn't cover that you absolutely want to touch on?
I touched briefly in the beginning about my story. We had, we were in the US for a year after we got married. We had our first son there, and his name is Toby. And when he was born, about a day after he was born, we were told that he had Down syndrome. And at first, we didn't realize what it meant to our lives. We realized we had a gift on our hands. If you know someone has Down syndrome, you know they're special people. They're loving, they're transparent, they're open, they have no hidden agenda. I wrote a book about him called Lessons from Toby, because he impacted my life so much, and he still does, but how he's transparent. He just walks the talk. He's just so open with people, and he's the role model. He's what's inspired me to allow me to articulate this so clearly, because he's how we should all be. Not hidden agendas, direct with people, open, caring about people. And that book, all my clients have the book by their bedside. They read it every single night, because each page has a little nuance in there about how to be centered in your personal life. But the way he views the world is what I've embedded inside my philosophy that makes this work so effectively and make people a lot of money because of it.
Well, there's a recent video out there with Gary Woodland with a young lady that also had Down syndrome, and it's Waste Management Open. If people haven't seen it, I've always liked Gary Woodland. I like him a heck of a lot more with the care, the grace, and how much he genuinely cared about this young woman. So I'm sure, Toby, that's a book I'm absolutely going to check out. That's amazing and such great lessons to learn. Ari, where can people reach to you? Just, they want to hear more about what you're doing in the sales world, They want to hear more about Toby, any of those things. Just connect with you, brother. Where would they best do that online?
Best place to go first is unlockthegame.com, just like it sounds. All my books there. There's a free masterclass you can log in and watch right away to get more of this live, more insights, more languaging. And of course, also on LinkedIn, I'm very active there. I have a show there once a month called Stump the Guru, where you can jump in live and ask me your toughest bomb question like you were today and try and stump me for fun. And connect with me there. I'm visible. Say hello, that you met me here, heard about me here. We'll go from there.
I love that. Stump the Guru. Guys, bring some heat questions for him. This guy is so smooth. He's so calm and yet extremely authentic and genuine, brother. I just appreciate your time. I love what you're doing out. Sales is a good thing. It's a great thing. It has treated my family so well. I love that you're changing the perception by changing it through vulnerability and trust, brother. It really does kind of warm my heart. So thank you for being here and doing what you do, man.
Thank you for having me.
All right, you guys go check him out. I mean, look, every part of your life is sales. I don't care whether you're in sales or not. I 100% think you will get a ton of value. So go check Ari out, check out his books. Absolutely. I'm going to read about Toby because it sounds like an amazing young man. I want you guys to remember, until next time, your mindset matters. And I also, hey, I'm working on one thing. I need you guys to go subscribe and review. We're building this. We're sharing amazing people like Ari to the world. I will pause for a second. Go ahead. Okay. I think you had time to review in that time. 5-star review would be awesome. Appreciate all you guys, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.